All right, Jay, don't you consider yourself an author or something? What are you doing all day?
I am an author. I don't know if I'm a good author, but I am an author, so yes.
I mean, are all authors good? I mean, I've heard of this billionaire, millionaire author that no one's heard of except everybody.
Yeah, yeah. Who are you talking about? I don't know if I'm familiar with.
He made this really, apparently, one of the books he wrote was this amazing thing on Amazon called Wheel of Time.
Oh, so you're
It's a
talking.
great show. Just like knocked it out of the park. TV
So you're
show.
talking about
Fantasy
Robert
books.
Jordan.
Yeah, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, so Robert Jordan did write The Wheel of Time, but it was finished by another author. No one's ever heard of this author. Maybe that's who you're talking about.
Yeah, because of course I've heard of the other guy. Of course.
Oh, what's his name? Oh,
I think it's like Barry Sanders. No, that's a baseball player.
yeah, it was Bob Sanderson. No, that's just
Sounds right.
nonsense.
Sanderson.
Oh,
Samsonite.
Oh, I was way
You're
off.
way off.
Brandon Sanderson, who lives like 10 minutes from me, by the way.
Ooh, you live in a rich neighborhood then. Nice.
No, I do not. I just know where he works, and it's 15 minutes away. So,
And you know where he lives and when he goes to parks and when he works out. Jay, are you a stalker?
I did recently buy a spotting scope. So,
Ooh.
uh,
But that's true though, right? It's an article dropped about a very well-known, not even locally here with us, like world-renowned fantasy author.
like a top 5 fantasy author currently, if not number 1.
And there's not that many. Like
No,
there's R.R. Martin, there's Tolkien, there's not Tolkien. Tolkien, he's not alive. J.K. Rowling, like fantasy based, right?
Patrick Rothfuss would be one.
Yeah.
Name of the Wind. # Nick Podell.
Love Name of the Wind.
Yeah.
That one I actually did listen to.
Mwah. All the performance.
Fantastic. But yeah, so the reason we brought him up, and I want a little detail for him, is a Wired, a very well-known magazine, like one of the nerdiest magazines out there, did a whole article on him.
Dude, it was bananas. It was called Brandon Sanderson Is Your God, and I was like, well, incredible marketing. Like that title is amazing, but when you actually read it, dude's a prick.
Yeah. The guy behind the article, which if we want to GBN it, it's gonna be a lot of B's, a lot of bads.
Yeah.
So tell me, so he did finish a book, right? Apparently the guy can only write.
Yeah. I don't know. So
what is he known for, Jay? Where did you find him? You know him way more than I do.
Sanderson?
Yeah. You know, you've met him, right? Didn't we meet him?
Yeah. So I've met Brandon Sanderson. We invited him onto the cast. He said, maybe if it had been 5 years ago.
Hey, at least he gave us a maybe 5 years ago.
He just said, it's really hard to do now because he's gotten so busy. Like I said, he's a top 5 fantasy author. He used to do a lot of multi-podcasts, and I do think had it been 8 years ago, we would have been able to get him. We just mistimed it.
Hey, there's still time.
It's true. One of these days we'll have him on. That's the ultimate goal. That's my God tier goal. If we can get Brandon Sanderson on, that's the ultimate goal.
I'm aiming higher for Zachary Levi or, anybody from any TV show I like. But yeah, I like
Okay, you're sounding a little bit like that Wired guy. Who's this Brandon Sanderson?
I don't care that he's on, and then we'll just have like 80 more million people listening to us. I don't care about that.
Dude, so yeah, well, it was so funny. Brandon Sanderson, brings this guy out, lets him stay with like his family in his house. Like
this is the Wired author, right?
Yeah, feeds
the guy
him.
who wrote the article.
Yeah, all this stuff, and then this dude writes this article calling him like this religious weirdo and all this other stuff, and it's like, oh, like wow, that I don't know. I honestly think he was probably trying to get a rise out of people because he wanted more people to read it. There's a lot of that in journalism. But still, I thought it was pretty over the line. And I don't know, we'll talk about Brandon Sanderson's response, and we'll get into the article pretty good, but your question was, who is Brandon Sanderson, right?
Yeah, what is he known for? Because apparently the Wheel of Time is 1,000 books, and he finished like 4 of them, and but it was an honor that he took over. That's rare. When you're asked to take over for someone, it's a big deal. So yeah, tell me about him.
Yeah, okay. So starting with the Wheel of Time. So Brandon Sanderson, when he first became a writer, he was writing at night. He was working at a hotel, and he would work the night shift, and he would just write every night. And he'd written about 10 books, and he finally, after the 10th book, or maybe it was 13, he finally was able to get one published, and he was a published fantasy author, and he was doing pretty well. He was semi-well known, and Robert Jordan passes away. He's writing The Wheel of Time one of Brandon Sanderson's favorite series. And Mrs. Robert Jordan, his wife, reaches out to Brandon Sanderson, handpicks him. Like, she'd been given a list from the publisher, like, here's the authors we want to have take over. And she said, I don't want them to write it. I want Brandon Sanderson to write it. And so she reaches out to him. He very, very, very humbly accepts, finishes The Wheel of Time for Robert Jordan. Did a really good job. I think, I've read The Wheel of Time. I do prefer Robert Jordan's writing, but I think that, it's his series. I should prefer his writing, but in terms of like as good as you can do, Brandon Sanderson did. He did an incredible job finishing it. And kudos to Robert Jordan for, having such a great book for him to come over. But talk about changing, an inflection point in Brandon Sanderson's life to finish it. And then since then, he wrote Mistborn, was a big series he wrote after that. A lot of people have heard of Mistborn. And then he's gotten into his God tier level of books called The Way of Kings. It's a Stormlight Archive book, but it is like, that is the book that turned him from, a top 50 fantasy author to a top 5. Was The Way of Kings books have been that good and that influential. And that's how I had heard of him. I first heard of him through our Dungeon Master, #Eric. Well done, Eric. I was doing inspections for a bank and I needed a book, so Eric said, read The Wheel of Time. It's narrated by Michael Kramer and Kate Reading. Really good. Or Redding, excuse me. Anyway, that kind of started it for me. I then transitioned to The Wheel of Time, which is narrated by the same people. I read all 13 books, and since then I've just been catching up on Sanderson's work because he has so many series. I'm more than halfway through his stuff, but there's a lot to read. I'm caught up on all of Mistborn and all of The Wheel of all of The Wheel of Time, and then also all of The Way of Kings. But there are a few other books that he has out that I haven't finished yet. But I've paid for a few of his kids' college books through through how many of his books I've bought and listened to and everything else. So
that's awesome. What's a little bit of what is it called? The Way of the King? What's it called? The second one?
The Way of Kings, yeah.
Yeah. What's that a little bit? It's all fantasy based. Is it closer to Game of Thrones? Like what made him next level?
So he came up with that series with this idea of, he's really good. His big thing is magic systems. And he had this idea of, he wanted basically like Iron Man armor in a fantasy realm. Like you have armor that heals and like is impenetrable. And so you have these like giant suits of armor that, are super light and like impenetrable. And they have all this energy infused in them. And he had this idea for a storm that passes over. Anyway, he has a really intricate magic system. He's really good on magic systems. And the more he's written, the better he's gotten at a lot of other things. His humor originally was not incredible. Like if you read his first books, the humor in it isn't very good. But by the time you get to The Way of Kings, he's really funny. Character development. He had good character development in the beginning, but by the time you get to Way of Kings, like his characters are unbelievably good. It mostly follows two characters, one named Dalinar Kholin, the other named Kaladin Stormblessed. People will tell me that Shallan is a main character, and I agree, but I would say the two main are still Kaladin and Dalinar. You can tell me what you want. You can at me. I don't care,
How dare they even bring that up in front of you?
Shallan really is a main character. She's one of the main three, I would say. And then there's a bunch of others. He's really good at point of view switches. Because he's a master writer, he can do it. Anyway, it follows basically like, it's so, the thing is he's developed a magic system in worlds that are so different than anything else that it's hard to even be like, oh, it's like this or oh, it's like that. The only one that it's close to is The Wheel of Time, and even that it's not that close. But it takes place in a Cosmere, right? So there's a Cosmere, a group of planets that are in a solar system, and you can travel between them by visiting like the Upside Down, basically. Anyway, each world has its own magic system. And each world has its own god associated with that magic system. So it's very much D&D, like that. Mm. So you have different planes of existence or different planets with different moons and stuff. Anyway, so that's the basic premise, is every story takes place on the Cosmere, and there's a different magic for each one. So, there you go.
How many books do they have on that?
In the Cosmere?
Yeah.
So I think he's got he's got an original 3 Mistborn trilogy with another 3 or 4 books afterwards. So there's 7 in the Mistborn. on the Mistborn planet, which I can't remember off the top of my head. It's hard to remember it all. Like, he is that dedicated.
Dang. So just on one planet, he has 7 books?
7 books on one planet, and then The Way of Kings. And The Way of Kings books are massive. Like, I could go get it, but, like, if you were to drop it from the Empire State Building, you would kill someone with that book.
Oh. I mean, you can do that with a Tic Tac, but jeez.
With a Tic Tac? No.
You can kill someone with a Tic Tac.
No, you would hit terminal velocity.
I've done it.
Okay. You're like that cook on Ratatouille. And he's 4 books into that one, and I've read all 4 of those, and each one is like 50 hours of Audible for those books.
That's a really long time.
Yeah, that's how long they are.
Because even like 24 hours on one, like that took me like 5 months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so these are massive. Think twice the size of the Deathly Hallows. So he's got 4 books there that are massive on that planet, and then he's got another planet that I haven't read any of the books on, and it's like very sci-fi. One of the planets is very sci-fi. So one is very like Western, one is very like medieval with really cool suits of armor, and then one is very sci-fi. And then there's a few other planets in the Cosmere. There's Secret Wars. There's a bunch of stuff, dude. And he has characters that are world hoppers that jump around. It is hard to keep up on. Like, I would say I'm a huge Sanderson nerd, and someone in the comments is going to go off on me for this. So, but he's.
But it was a good elevator pitch. That's all I wanted.
Okay, yeah. So that's your quick overview of Brandon Sanderson. In terms of how good of a writer he is, I would say he's my favorite writer. Now, I would say his originals, like Mistborn, is fine. I would say Robert Jordan was better than him when he wrote Mistborn. I would say now with The Way of Kings, he's better than Robert Jordan, barely. So that's kind of where we're at. He's an incredible author, though. And he's better than, I would say, Patrick Rothfuss is the only current one who came even close to Sanderson, and he's acknowledged that. George R. R. Martin's good, but he's a little bit too violent for me. He's a little too hardcore. He's too metal.
Well, that's good. And I'm glad to bring it up with you because you also are writing your book. And like you understand like what a quarter of the pages of that book took a long time. So just the appreciate of how much goes into it.
So my audiobook will end up being, I can say this, it'll end up being about 9 hours.
And how long is 40 on the other one?
Over 50 on some of them. Well over 50.
But 9 hours is great though. It's like boom boom. That's what I like.
Well, and mine took 4 years to do, and it's on its 10th revision, so we're hoping it comes out next year. I have some cool announcements coming up, but I need some confirmations before I can announce them.
I told you I will play anyone in your book. I mean, I don't know why you're.
I actually had someone pay me to be in the book. They wanted a character named after him, so it's pretty funny.
But that's cool though. So that's a good understanding for the Knights who don't know a lot about him to see where he's at, because until they make a TV show or movie about his stuff, a lot of people like me can't keep track of a lot of the stuff going on.
So cool news is they are starting to develop Mistborn.
Which was your second favorite?
Yeah. So Mistborn's interesting because it has the original trilogy, and then 200 and some odd years pass, and then you have the next 4 books on the same world, but like they go from Carnival Row. They go from like that Sherlock Holmes era to not Carnival Row. They go like even before that. They go like if one book is in the 1600s, the next book is in the 1800s. So you go from you're still kind of medieval to
a little more industrial revolution.
Exactly. Now you've got railroads. Now you've got guns.
The world's a little bigger.
Exactly. And of all his stuff, that second set of 4 books it's the Wax and Wayne trilogy, and it's a buddy cop trilogy, and it's incredible. Like, dude, if I could get someone to start reading any of his books, it would be those ones.
Okay, I was gonna go there. Like, where you recommend someone to start? Because you can't just start Wheel of Time.
Start with The Way of Kings. Start with The Way of Kings, and then go back and do Mistborn. That's how I would recommend it. Because The Way of Kings is so good. Kaladin is so good.
The way you're pitching it as Way of Kings is what I should listen to next.
Well, what's interesting is I mentioned that there's a god for each world. If you do Way of Kings first, you meet the god, and it's like, wow, this is God. Like you think it's the god of everything, but it's really just the deity of that world. So there is some, yeah. Anyway, it's so hard to, like, Johnny, it's such a can of worms. Like, the amount that I've compressed for you right now is incredible.
That's why I had you on my cast that we both run.
One, I've got some of it wrong, but I have tried really hard to keep up with Sanderson. The dude's a madman. He comes out with like one of those books every other year. One of those
and in the
books.
article goes off of how disciplined he is to write for 8 hours a day, pretty much, from what we gathered from the article.
Yeah, let's go back to the article. Brandon Sanderson is your god.
Yeah, and it's I'm still gonna go back to how cool the guy who wrote the article complaining about our Chinese food here. Like, get over yourself. Anyway,
we have some really good Chinese food. You just have to know. I
don't know why he's complaining, because he's from the Bay Area. Like, what do you expect? We don't have great street tacos where you are, but guess what? If you talk to a local, we'll tell you where to go for great street tacos. Like, maybe you just went to the wrong spot.
Right, and I don't know, dude. I went and got food in San Francisco, and it wasn't that great. Like, I went to one of the highest-rated restaurants there, and it was like, it's fine. Yeah. It was good. But, like, like any city, good food is in one place, and good food is in another place, and it's all just about figuring it out. Figure it out.
Yeah, figure it out, bud. Don't sort yourself out. And then the other part, so the cool thing about the article, a lot of bad, but the good part was he kind of broke down a day in the life of Sanderson, which was really cool.
That part was awesome.
It threw me off, though, because, like, when I first read it, it's like he wakes up at 1 p.m. and I go, what?
Dude's manic. Yeah, he's insane. He sleeps until like noon or 1 every day, and he stays up till like
stuff that you and me have dealt with insomnia and not shutting down the monsters. Like, I've had trouble going to bed at 4 a.m. You used to have that. Like, it's hard. So you understand the plight.
I take melatonin every night to try and
get a 5 a.m. job. That's sorted me out a little.
Oh, yeah, no.
But his thing is, he wakes up when the sun's blaring, writes, works out, sees his family because it's 4 p.m., plays some video games, and then writes and goes to bed. That's his whole day, which is perfect.
He's the master of double tasking. He's really good at it. If you ever watch his podcast, he'll be signing books as he's podcasting, just because he can do it without needing to like pay attention. He can do things. He's a very good multitasker. So anyway, that's one more. But I really loved that summary of his life, Johnny. Yeah. So it's cool that he's so close, because like he mentions this, but he just had a Kickstarter. That the Kickstarter for like a new book series reached like $50 million in 2 days. Did you read that part?
Yeah, the surprise Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And what is this for? What book is this for? Is it the same trilogy, the same storyline, or is it all different?
It's like a secret project. He wrote it, and it's in the Cosmere. It's in that group of planets, but it doesn't take place on any one of the planets. Meaning, like, I think it's about the World Hoppers.
We should have paid better attention. We could have kickstarted and gotten the tier where he comes on our podcast for us. Ugh.
Yeah. Well, he just, I don't know if you've heard of Mark Rober. He's a mechanical engineer who does like interesting videos for people on YouTube. Mm-hmm. He worked for NASA. Anyway, he was a space engineer. He did all this cool stuff, and now he started a YouTube channel where he like demonstrates science. But he and Brandon Sanderson got together, and they demonstrated one of his magic systems using science. Because there are ships that ride spores of... Anyway, it's basically like ships riding sand, except for it's spores of fungus. Like, there's seas of fungus that they ride the spores, because there's Anyway, there's air coming from the world.
I don't believe in science, so whatever you say is cool for me.
I'll send you the video. Just look up Mark Rober meets Brandon Sanderson. But it was a cool video. I highly recommend it. In fact, I'm just going to put it in the comments below. If you want to see it, the video, it's there in our comments. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. I did love that about the article. I like that even though I had to sift through a lot of his own like problems, it's like, dude, go see a therapist.
Complaining.
Oh my gosh. Like,
and he complained about our favorite park, that we've been invited to several times, Evermore.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how many places have a cool park where nerds can dress up and have fun? Like,
I know.
Come on, dude.
I know, one of the most inclusive parks. They do a good job. I think the dude just was having a bad week. Something was going on. And he was
like complaining about, and it's in the dark because the park is deteriorating. I'm like, watch one of our videos, baby. We're in the daytime. We're rocking that place.
Yeah, well, and there was, I don't know, he talked about, I had to drive out there and it was freezing, and it's like, who cares? Like,
welcome to not LA. Like, what do you want, bud?
Yeah, figure it out.
Yeah, welcome on, man. Turn on the heater, get heated seats.
Yeah, this isn't even that.
we were out in the winter in the rain, and we loved going to Evermore Park. So we did that. Does not stop true nerds.
We held hands and jumped in puddles.
Yeah, and that was just a normal March. Like that wasn't even cold. We just did that for fun.
Yeah. Yeah, figure it out. What was I going to say? I did like, so Brandon Sanderson came out with this really nice response, because the thing is he has millions of followers, right? And his response was basically like, guys, this is a person. Please don't go after him. Because he could control the mob, you know, like if he wanted to have that guy, like people going after him, he could, like.
Yeah, don't storm the Bay Area.
Yeah, exactly. So he just said, remember, he's a human. Like, we're all humans. We're just trying our best. Like, I enjoyed the time we spent together. Like, you know, no hard feelings between any of us, which I really liked. Sanderson's probably, I would say, so my favorite thing about Brandon Sanderson is he's a big believer in giving back. So he does a bunch of videos, a bunch of podcasts. He teaches for BYU, even though he doesn't have to. Like, he could get away without needing to be a teacher, and he'll post his lectures online. So I've watched like hundreds of hours of his lectures and of his podcasts and everything else, because he teaches writing lessons. So Writing Excuses is the name of it. It's also in the comments. But yeah, so you can check out his podcast. But he's incredible on giving back. Like for someone who has gotten, you know, he's been so blessed with his ideas and with publishing, and now with Hollywood, like he's talked about how Mistborn is being made amongst other films, and The Way of Kings is really difficult. But he gives so much back that it's like he's the best author in my opinion. He's the best.
And what's cool about him and other stories is he didn't just write one novel and become massive. It took, 13 to get published? How many did he write before he even got published?
He cranks. So I always wonder about that. Like, were these just first drafts that he published, and eventually after the 10th draft he got good enough to where it was, you know, I think it was Elantris was his first published book, and that takes place in the Cosmere. So pretty much all of his, I shouldn't say all, but the vast majority of his books have taken place in the Cosmere.
Yeah, but that's just what I was saying is don't give up after writing 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, right? Like, keep grinding it out.
And he says this, which is really cool, which to me was an inspiration just to finish my book. He said the distance to get your first book finished is closer than it is to become, or is further than it is to become a published author after finishing the book. So if you can finish a book, it's easier from that point on to get published than it is to have actually finished the book. Because so many people start a book, 5 chapters, and they give up. That's how it was for me. It took you giving me the best idea of all time for me to actually commit to a book.
It's what I do best, baby. It's what I do.
Okay. Really quick, we got to go back on this because it's funny. So I'd been writing a few books, didn't like them, had given up. I think I'd started 3 or 4. I'd also started some screenplays and other stuff. Just never felt like I had the idea that was the idea. And I asked Johnny, like, what is it called when you mesh genres? And Johnny goes, it's bounty hunters writing dragons. And I am guaranteed that you were firing from the hip right there, because I've Googled it, what meshing genres is, and I've never seen anything like it. I think that was pure inspiration, because I call Johnny was just making, that was nerd osmosis. You were just making something up.
So I've truly, and I'll say this more once we have your big book launch, I've always thought of that. Like, what's the difference? Because people say, like, this is fantasy, this is sci-fi. And I've always was like, what distinguishes both of them, right? So I've always had that concept in my head. But I did, when you announced it, that did just come into my head. But I've thought about that topic for like 5 years. Like, how did sometimes you'll watch, in my life, I was like, what is both? Find me both. Star Trek. No, this is fantasy. This is sci-fi. That's sci-fi. This is fan. It's hard to get a mesh. Right, because you need to get magic and science. It's hard to do.
Yeah. So the whole goal of my storytelling is I wanted to mesh them. I wanted to have it be something that was very magical that also felt like it could be real. That was my whole goal, and so far I feel like I've accomplished it. But I know my editors are saying you can't do that.
That's when you do it.
The peas are green and the carrots are orange, and they mustn't touch.
But every great creator goes, no, sees the world different and meshes it up. And I was going to say, like, how many people started a podcast 3 years ago, right? Tens of millions.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they're done. They got like 4 in. And then you and me are on our 400th one, still trekking.
We just hit our 100th YouTube video.
Woo!
I think we have like 40,000 views on YouTube or something like that. Pretty good. It's about to be a lot more.
Especially from podcasters who do video casting. We don't just do, and you know, as cool as we are, we're just a couple of nerdy dudes, man, talking. Hey, no one's gonna run to see us unless we give them something to watch.
One, it took us a long time to finally get onto YouTube.
We tell people, it took us like 2 years to even get on YouTube. It took a 4-day weekend, which I always say almost broke us up to even get subs on FanX, right?
Yeah. 28,000 total views was what it was at, almost 29,000.
That's a big deal for us because it's not like
and
people are clamoring.
Our goal was always we wanted to meet cool people and we wanted to get into places for free. That was all we ever wanted to do. And so far, like we've met we've met B-list actors, A-list narrators.
They're accredited.
Oh, dude, they've been in big blockbuster movies.
Yeah. We get into shows. Evermore Park, which I don't care what that guy says, man. We get into there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And hopefully we'll have some cool announcements about something else in the spring. More stuff in the fall to drop.
Yeah. So I was just going to ask, what was your big lesson learned from like reading the article, from hearing about his response, and then just in terms of Brandon Sanderson, what were your big takeaways?
I really am interested because you've told me several times, because you know who I am, and you're like, listen, you can do the Sword of Truth by Terry Goodkind. You can do that book. Wheel of Time, these stuff are a little more, you got to pay attention because I zone out really well. And you were like, Johnny, pay attention. So it's really cool to understand how his mind works, that he just always grinds it out, which is I can take my time and really pay attention to what he writes. That was cool to find out more about him. That helped a lot about the article. And how he replies to the guy. Like every time the guy complained about something or was like, your religious background did this, his response was very tamed.
The dude went pretty personal on some of the attacks.
And I get it, because we grew up here. Like, we grew up not far from, we're in the same atmosphere as him. Same background. Like, we may not support the college he goes to, but we know where he's coming from. That's an inside joke for anyone who lives locally.
Red, black, and white, so.
Yeah. So it's very cool to, like, it's a good, calm response, because all you're going to, I don't know if he was, like, digging for a fight, but it's good because we're going to get to that point where people are going to start talking to us, and the best response is like not giving them any ammo. Just be like, yeah, this is how it's done.
Yeah, it's the epitome of class to just be like, I really enjoyed my time with you. All the best. You're a person. All the best,
Yeah.
Thanks
for writing about me. And guess what? I got more views out of it than you did.
Yeah. That's the thing is like, it probably is just going to add fuel to Brandon Sanderson's fire. Like, you know what I mean? No publicity is bad publicity. When you're that good of a writer, no publicity is bad publicity.
And it's not like people are going to stop reading his book. Yuck. And you're Wired magazine. Like, come on.
Our friend Coleman, he's the one we probably should have asked. Dude is obsessed with Brandon Sanderson, knows all of his works. Like, I'm a nerd, but Coleman is like the epitome of nerd.
I almost was going to aside ask you this, but now that it's on the cast, is Coleman's, because Coleman's one of our friends. He played Dungeons and Dragons with us, and he's very well, like, Coleman's characters blow me away of how intricate they are. The campaign that me and you are currently playing is one of his characters based on Sanderson's world, because his character has armor that does not magic, but does electrical stuff that...
I would say that it's not like copy and pasted out of the world, but if he were to find his way into Brandon Sanderson's world, he wouldn't feel out of place. That's my political answer.
So it's a little inspiration.
The thing is like, and so this is fun for you, Johnny. So just as a background, we're doing a homebrew for our listeners, and
that means a story that our DM Eric created.
Literally wrote, spent years writing. But what's kind of fun is like, a lot of the themes that Eric does are written by either Robert Jordan or Brandon Sanderson. Like they're pulled from those two book series pretty heavily. So like the Crimson Guard in our book series are like the Children of the Light and the Wheel of Time. So it's just kind of fun that like if you ever read the Wheel of Time or if you ever read the Way of Kings, you're going to be like, huh.
I fought these guys with dice.
Yeah. And what's funny is like sometimes in our campaign I'll say sayings from the Wheel of Time or from the Way of Kings. I'll say stuff like, instead of saying tobacco, you call it tabac. Can I get some tabac? Or sometimes I'll say if and it pleases the light. That's from the way not the Way of Kings, the Wheel of Time. So anyway, if once you do read them, it'll be fun for us as an inside joke. None of our listeners are going to even understand what's going on, but basically, if you're a dungeon master and you do a homebrew, you are going to if you take from one resource, it's plagiarism. If you take from a lot of sources, it's research. So
yeah, and inspiration comes from all ends. No one just, hate to break it to everyone, but King Arthur, all these books, man, they all got inspiration from somewhere.
No, there's no original story.
I mean, even on our last cast, the Mandalorian tried to rip off Troy. Like, come on now.
Oh my gosh, such low-hanging fruit, so bad. And it didn't even start a war. There were 2 threatenings of war that never actually happened.
So if you can't tell, Knights, we're still annoyed about our last cast, or however cast it was ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
Still annoyed.
Final thoughts for our listeners: if you are going to read Brandon Sanderson, you can start with Mistborn, or you can start with The Way of Kings. I wouldn't start anywhere else. Those are the 2 books I would for sure do. If you're unsure about it and you want to have a really long and boring but incredible book series, start with The Wheel of Time, and you'll eventually finish with Sanderson, and those will just eventually you won't have enough. It's very addicting.
And I will brag that you gave him some of our decals, so he does.
And signed autograph of us. He's got a signed autograph of us.
Yeah, that's true. We Knights, our favorite picture that people still have it in their fridge. We had confirmation. They still have it that are not our blood relatives. Still have our autograph picture in their fridge at home. We gave him one because why not? Yeah. And for at least a millisecond, who knew who we were, and that's all Jay wanted.
Yeah, I love it. So, Johnny, our ultimate goal, at least mine, is to have Brandon Sanderson on the cast. I think it's going to happen in the next 4 years.
I was going to say the next 4 months. No, I do like him as a goal. I have way other goals, but if we knock that out, it's going to be great.
Yeah. Anything else? Final thoughts for our listeners?
Yeah, anyone who's listening who knows him and wants him to have on our cast, we're more than welcome to have him on.
Yeah. Open invitation. He can walk into my door anytime.
Or just,
Brandon.
Zoom in. He doesn't need to be that close to Jay because Jay will pass out. I was almost there when he did.
He does give the advice, don't be a fanboy. He's like, when you meet these authors, don't be a fanboy. And I'm like, that's bad advice.
That's bad advice. We're going to fan out bad.
I'm not going to do that.
No, we fan out great because we are fanboys, and that's why we did this. My final thing is, Knights, just don't give up, man. This is what I love about Jay. I told Jay, just finish that dang book, brother.
And read
all
it
you got to do. Just finish the book. And then write 19 more for me. But read it to me, though. That's all I care about.
That's right. All right, Knights. What do you think of Brandon Sanderson? Which book should people start with? Let us know in the comments below. And we will catch you on the Flippity Flop.
Flippity Flip.